Thank you, James. Thank you, Elko, and hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. I am Diego Borrero. I'm the technical lead for business environment reform at the ICR Facility, the Investment Climate Reform Facility. It's great to be here with all of you today, and hopefully soon more in person. Next slide, please. So the ICR facility is co-funded by the European Union, the OACPS, the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, and the British Council, and we are 4 implementing partners. Talking about joint implementation from the previous presentation. We are GIZ, British Council, Expertise France, and SNV. So what's the objective of ICR? It is simple. It is to contribute to the improvement of investment climate in African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries. To do this, we respond to technical assistance requests that come from ACP countries, 77 of the 79 ACP countries, and we implement our interventions at 3 levels. The first level is support the enhancement of the business environment through all of its functional areas. The second one is business environment sustainability and how we can support these policies and reforms to make the business environment more socially and environmentally sustainable. And then third, we support structured public-private dialogue processes and mechanisms that can actually enhance and inform these reforms and policies. So for the purpose of this session, it is important to reiterate that we are an on-demand facility. We deploy our technical assistance to respond to specific requests from policymakers and other stakeholders in beneficiary countries. So this is an interesting aspect to keep in mind when picturing the facility in the current COVID scenario. So we are demand driven. That's the first point to take note of. Unlike traditional programs, there is where there is a specific beneficiary and a set idea to be implemented, we actually respond to requests and we engage in a dialogue with those beneficiaries to respond to those specific needs. Next slide, please. So the facility officially starts operation in December 2019. And when the crisis hits, the COVID crisis hits, we were in the middle of our inception period. So somehow we were lucky to enter that COVID crisis and go through that disruption during that inception period. Why? Because it's a defining moment for a program, for any of your programs. And I say this why we were quite lucky, and this is rather positive because being hit during the inception, we were able to further prepare our action to be implemented in that completely different world that COVID brought us. So we plan our actions around those key questions, which, by the way, now serve me to also structure a series of lessons learned for the purpose of this session. And the first question is how a demand-driven facility that is not transferring any funds or buying any goods for the beneficiaries, how can it better serve those countries which were going and are going through an unprecedented crisis? The second question is, what does it mean to provide technical assistance in the era of social distance and travel restrictions and so on? Technical assistance being by definition or traditionally an in-person activity. Next slide, please. So the first answer is that investment climate reform is more relevant than ever. Although, and we saw it in the first slide from James, although client countries are short of cash and their main priority is to inject liquidity to keep the economy rolling, investment climate reform plays a key role in both facing the shock and rebuilding the economy. Actually, just yesterday, the ILO released just a new study revealing that the pandemic cost in terms of working hours losses during 2020 was equivalent to 255 million jobs being lost. 255 million jobs. That's a lot, and that's 4 times higher than the subprime 08-09 crisis. So, on one hand, investment climate reform and hence the facility can help countries respond to those initial effects of the crisis, including even the health crisis, from a private sector angle. For example, to help repurpose the industries or to enhance supply chains for key products such as food or medical devices, as we saw in the previous presentation, or for example, to ensure business continuity. And actually, one of those examples is our intervention to support CARICOM in the Caribbean, where the ICR facility will indeed provide capacity building for national standards body on business on 6 ISO standards about business continuity management and how we can be better prepared to these pandemics and these shocks. Investment climate reform is also key to support the private sector and create and save jobs. And as we know, rebuilding the economy will be slow. So it is crucial to enable that business environment to support, for example, investment policy frameworks to increase the attraction of FDI flows or retain investors, or just to make business operations less burdensome or costly so that small businesses can actually survive. In that sense, for example, the ICR facility is supporting the Madagascar Economic Development Board in the definition of a white paper, a long-term recovery strategy with an assessment of the private sector needs, specific private sector needs for post-COVID recovery. Finally, about this importance of investment climate reform, never waste a good crisis, no, they say. Crises generate momentum for those ambitious, long-due investment climate reforms that can actually make the economies more resilient for future shocks. And at the ICR facility, we are conscious of that opportunity, and it is part of our dialogue with governments. But also, the current crisis had led us to deepen our dialogue with beneficiaries and partners on the ground about the importance of building back better, integrating more social and environmental sustainability aspects or components into their private sector policies, and hopefully more and more through our interventions. Let's not forget that the next global crisis is climate, and there won't be other vaccine to that crisis other than just acting now, and it's our responsibility. So investment climate reform can help trigger those structural changes in a country, and therefore we are also prioritizing the integration of those components into our interventions. For example, in Ghana, we are supporting the the analysis of the business environment for the development and the creation of green jobs through the Ministry of Labor Green Jobs National Strategy. Next slide, please. So public-private dialogue is one of the pillars of the ICR facility, and through our support during the crisis, we have seen an increased need to nurture this structured public-private dialogue. This crisis actually confirms that PPD needs to be boosted in this private sector support processes. Of course, PPD is important to design, implement, and sustain reforms and policies, but now it is even more important to rightly shape those responses from policymakers, responses to the crisis, so that they respond to those real needs, because differences in the way, for example, the hospitality sector is affected drastically compared to other sectors, or how women-owned business are affected way more violently than men-owned businesses. So this makes PPD more relevant, and ICR has PPD as a core component of our action, either by fostering the dialogue to reach a certain result, or by supporting directly these PPD structures. For example, the ICR facility is currently supporting the UMOA Commission in West Africa to develop a regional PPD structure to tackle investment climate reforms in 8 countries. Next slide, please. Adaptability. Adaptability is key to deliver results during the crisis. Why? And I think I'm echoing a little bit what the previous colleagues from FIAP mentioned. In our case, it has been key, this adaptability, first to understand the beneficiary, listening to the requesters and understanding the context in which they move during the crisis is very important. Why? Because the concept of investment climate can be pretty wide, and so are the challenges faced by our partner countries during the crisis. Therefore, particularly in fragile economies, we need a hand-holding approach so that the right interventions responding to the most pressing needs or the most important for the beneficiary are taken. Adaptability also comes from the formats and the vehicles of intervention, and we had that flexibility. Crises are by definition, and particularly this one, changing and fluctuant. Therefore, our response to it needs to also mimic that flexibility and that adaptability. So ICR benefits from that flexibility in its design, because depending on the needs of each requester, we can adapt the vehicle of technical assistance, if it is a technical report, a training, or more hands-on advisory. Also, travel restrictions have led us to count more on local teams, local experts, and also find more innovative ways to deliver international expertise via digital modes. And that's the last point of that slide, which is that digital adoption is here to stay. Yeah, there is this famous McKinsey report that said that we jumped 5 years into our digitalization as humanity. So delivering technical assistance through digital modes can not only be more cost effective, and we are experiencing that, but also in many cases more inclusive. So this acceleration has favored more to reach out to larger audiences or stakeholders in PPD processes, or it has even favored the implementation of multi-country interventions, such as the one that we are currently supporting in 15 Caribbean countries in the topic of credit infrastructure. Next slide, please. So for this slide, supporting beneficiaries through a crisis can be the object of a paradox, and I would love to hear your reaction about that. Why? Because during a crisis, during such crisis, on one hand, the whole world acts in crisis mood, but at the same time, a coordinated effort is more relevant and more needed than ever to effectively tackle this crisis. So beneficiaries, in our case, requesters going through the crisis, may engage with multiple development partners at the same time to get support on the same issues. Therefore, a coordinated approach has been actually key to avoid duplication and foster synergies on the ground. We have seen situations where a requester, a request that we consider viable or eligible, we find out that another international development or local development partner is already supporting it. So communication and collaboration is key. And for us, partners such as the EU delegations are crucial to foster those synergies on the ground. We also build strongly on our implementing partners network so that the best local intel is there through the analysis and through the implementations. In that sense, for example, the Green Jobs intervention that I mentioned is actually co-implemented by SNV and GIZ, and it's a good example of a fruitful Team Europe implementation. Next slide, please. Finally, one aspect that I want to share is the connection between the technical assistance and the knowledge generation. Many of your technical assistance programs have also a knowledge management component. And here I have one last lesson, if I may say, to share with you. So when the crisis erupted, we developed together with our partners a series of practical targeted sessions on tackling the economic effects of the crisis. This series was put together within a few weeks because we understood the urgency of the moment. So really made an effort to develop this in a timely manner, but also to make them relevant. These series were designed in a way that it helped our ACP partners to face those problems, to tackle those problems in real time while they were actually facing them, going through them. Problems such as food supply disruptions or business continuity problems. So lesson in a world overcrowded with knowledge products, screen fatigue, and webinars, relevance is crucial. And because we were mindful that the process to approve a full-fledged intervention could be lengthy, we also accompanied those webinars with what we called clinics, which were small, a few hours sessions with the requesters. With eligible requesters that attended the webinar, so that we could dig further into the topics covered in the webinar and how they could be applied in their particular cases. So far, we did 14 clinics, and those clinics actually help the requesters tackling specific aspects of their ongoing crisis. And some of them even also led to full-fledged ICR interventions currently under assessment or in implementation. So that's all for now. Thank you very much for your attention. I remain available to further discuss in this session or bilaterally. And also, I really look forward to hear your reactions and also to learn from your own experience. And if you pass to the next slide, James, please. That's you can see our email address and the website of the ICR facility. Thank you very much.